Shabbat Shalom, happy Sabbath. This morning, our subject is entitled Yahvah'S Two Witnesses. Yahvah'S Two Witnesses. And the focus of our discourse this morning comes from the book of Chizayon, that's Revelation chapter 11. And this is dealing with the prophecy of the two witnesses. And we're living in the time of Laodicea, and Laodicea simply means a church, an assembly in judgment. We've got to understand that. So technically, all of us believers, we are witnesses of Yah, and we will have to give a report on the things that happened during the time that we have lived. Think of it this way. Let's assume that you make it to the end, because he that endureth to the end, the same will be saved. And at the banquet, you come in contact with Abraham, Yishtak, and Jacob. And you're having a conversation, and these men said to you, what was it like living in the time at the end? What report would you give them? Abraham for sure would tell you what happened during his time in chapter 14 when he met Melchizedek, and also when he took Isaac to be sacrificed, and a ram showed up out of the blue. He will tell you of his experience in Egypt and what happened. But what would you tell him? What is the primary event? What would you say to him or to either of them? Now, the thing is this, as I watch the unfolding scrolls of Yah's word, I think of the times in which we live. These are exciting times. And I think back to the first term of the current administration, that when this president came into being in terms of his first rule, on the day of his inauguration, he was 70 years old, 7 months and 7 days. 777. And instantly I realized something is happening here that is almost prophetic. His first full day in office was the 7th day of the week. And as we read through Revelation chapter 11, in verse 15, we see, and the 7th angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our master and is Mashiach, and he shall reign forever and ever. So we see 777, and the 7th angel sounded a trumpet. And interestingly, the president ruling now, his name is Trump. And we understand also that Yeshua, when he comes back, he's coming back in the season of trumpet, according to 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17. It says, when the trump sound, the last trump, and this is indeed his last term. When the sounding of that trumpet, the dead in Yeshua will rise, and those who are alive will be caught up to meet him in the air. And so this thing is interesting for me to ask myself the question, could it be that the last trump is sounded in the reign of the serving President Trump? Could it be? And so we want to look at that and try and understand what the word is saying to us today. You will remember it's only about 7 months ago since he took office and after winning his election. And during that period of time, campaign season, politicians in euphonious tones were promising good things for the nation. They made it known that prosperity was on the way and people were full of glee and ebullient about what was happening. And like Nimrod and the tower builders, they wanted to make a name for themselves. People were saying, let's make America great again. Nothing wrong with that. It is a noble aspiration to pursue making your nation great. But if the proclivity of that dream does not factor in righteousness as the foundation stone, what then is greatness, I ask? Would not a righteous America be more feared by the rest of the world than a military America? Even as Israel, ancient Israel, was more feared when they were on the Yah and were obedient to him than a military Israel under King Saul. Let's think on that. And so this morning, insight into hindsight will provide our foresight into the Word. Come with me to the book of Chizayon, as I indicated earlier, and the 11th portion of it. Yohanan, as you know, is on the island of Patmos. And he's there because of his faith and is imprisoned there. And he sees Yeshua in his glorified form. And he gives him a vision and the messages to the seven assembly passed on to him by the angels. And the word here says, and there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of Yah, and the altar, and them that worship therein, but the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the Kodesh city, the oldest city, shall they tread on the foot 42 months. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, that's our subject today, and they shall prophesy 1,203 days, clothed in sackcloth. Let's hold it there. Yohanan said he was given a measuring rod, and he was asked to measure the temple of Yah. That's an interesting statement. Most scholars will tell you, and theologians, that the book of Revelation was written about 95 AD. That's the consensus of the scholars. The preterist will tell you that this happened during the time of Nero, up until 68 AD. Whereas those who believe that this has not yet happened, they will cite Ezekiel 40 all the way to chapter 48, saying, this is in the future. The futurists will say this. My immediate point on this is this. At the time that Yohanan received this vision, if the book was written in 95 AD, there was no temple in Jerusalem. Because we know from previous study that the temple was destroyed in 70 AD by the Roman general Titus. So we ask ourselves the question, which temple is he referring to? Because we also know that we are the temple, and the Ruach dwells in us. We also know that the New Testament temple is the temple in heaven. When Moshe was told in Shemot, at Exodus chapter 25 and verse 8, let them build me a sanctuary that I may dwell with them. I want to teach them, says Yah, the mechanics of salvation, how a person gets saved. But make sure you build it after the pattern of the one in heaven. Build it after that one. And so we know that Yeshua is the one now serving in that temple because he is the high priest. He is the Kohen Agadah. He is the high priest. So the next verse of the same passage comes to us, and it says, these are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before Yah on the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeded out of their mouth and did devour their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. Interesting. Verse 5. Let's revisit. If any man will hurt them, fire proceeded out of their mouth, singular. And devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. Verse 6. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. Interesting. So the question is asked, who are these witnesses? Who are these? And the whole thing seems axiomatically paradoxical in the sense that most people, when they read this, they tell you that these two witnesses are Moshe and Elijah. Moshe being the lawgiver and Elijah a representative of the prophets. Who are they? It says that they're able to shut up the sky and no water. And if we read that in 1 Kings chapter 18, when Elijah said there would be no rain, we remember that. and it did not rain. Did not rain at all. But I want to take your minds back. As I indicated, it is the insight currently of hindsight, that which has gone before, that will provide the foresight into what we're studying today. So let's go back to the book of Joshua, chapter 6, and verse 26. And Joshua adjured them at the time, saying, Cursed be the man before Yahweh that riseth up and buildeth the city Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and his youngest son shall be set up the gates of it. So when the children of Israel took Jericho, Joshua, the leader there, put a curse on Jericho, saying it must never be rebuilt. There was a curse put on it. Come with me now to Melech Aleph. That's 1 Kings chapter 16. And let's look at verse 34. The word says, in the context of the curse that Joshua placed on Jericho, a man called Aiel, or Eel, decided, well, let's read what it says. It says, in the days that Aiel, the Bethelite, built Jericho, he laid the foundation thereof in Abiram, his firstborn, and set up the gates thereof in his youngest son, Segub, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun. Joshua says, anyone who builds the city will lose his two sons. This man went, built the city, and he lost his two sons. So we're made to understand that Elijah was in conversation with Ahab. And Ahab wanted to know, how could it be that the prophecy of Joshua is fulfilled? In that the man built Jericho and lost his two sons, but the prophecy of Moshe, of Moses, that was spoken long before, is not yet filled. Let's go and read what the prophecy of Moses said. Come with me to Deuteronomy chapter 11 and verse 17. The word says, then the anger of Yahweh will be kindled against you, and he will shut up the heavens, that there shall be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, and lest ye perish quickly from off the good land which Yah giveth you. So when Ahab asked him, how is it that this prophecy had yet not come through, Elijah said, it will not rain. And so he called upon Yah, and it was a famine for quite a while. So we know that this refers to Elijah, and so most people refer to him as the prophets, the law and the prophet. So they say it's Moses and Elijah that will come in the last days. And in fact, many of the Orthodox people claiming Jewry, when they have their Passover, they leave the door ajar for Elijah to come. And in fact, The disciples once asked Yeshua, how is it that these people say that Elijah must come first? And Yeshua responded and saying, Elijah did come. But then they realized he was talking about John the Baptist. John the Baptist came with the message of Elijah. What was Elijah's message? Repentance. Repent. And so we might well conclude that the coming of Elijah is not a physical Elijah, but it's the message and the spirit of Elijah that Yohanan the Immerser came in. And so whoever comes in the last day with the right message will come in the message and the spirit of Elijah. Turn with me so I can consolidate that particular point to the book of Mark. The book of Mark, and we will look at chapter 9. Chapter 9. And he said unto them, verily I say unto you, that there be some of them that stand here which shall not taste of death till they have seen the kingdom of Yah come with power. This is Yeshua talking to his Talmudim. He says, some of you will not see death until you see the kingdom come. And after 6 days, interesting, significantly so, because 6 days is significant in the sense that after 6,000 years, Yeshua will come. And so the seventh day is the real Sabbath, which is 1,000 years. The millennium period is really the Sabbath in which we will have rest. So today being the seventh day of the week, we are only rehearsing for the seventh day millennium, because Peter chapter 3 and verse 8 in 2 Peter, he tells us, be not ignorant of this one thing, because 1,000 years is just one day in Yah's sight. 1,000 terrestrial years is one celestial day. So the words here says that after 6 days, Yeshua taketh with him Kepha and Jacob, that's James, and Johanan, that's John, and leadeth them up into a high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. He's giving them a foretaste of what the kingdom looks like. So he took them up into a mountain, and he showed them. The word says, verse 3, and his raiment became shining, exceeding white as snow, so as no fuller on earth can white them. And there appeared unto them Elias and Moses, and they were talking with Yeshua. Here are the two witnesses that the consensus of scholars and theologians says, there you are, these are Elijah and Moshe. These are Moshe and Eliyahu. So they say, there it is. But let's not stop reading yet. And Kepha answered and said to Yeshua, Master, it is good for us to be here, and let us make 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moshe, and one for Elias. For he wist not what to say. He didn't know what to say, for they were sore afraid. and there was a cloud. There was a what? A cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." And suddenly, when they had looked round about, they saw no man anymore save Yeshua with only themselves. We know that Elijah and Moses are no more. And just as the vision here that they saw, we could read this also in Matthew chapter 17. They disappeared because remember what the intent of this vision was. He said, "You will not die until you see the kingdom." I'm going to give you a preview of the kingdom. And the two men that represents the law and the prophets were there. Then they disappeared and left him. Because he's now come. He has come to reign. He is the reigner in the kingdom. He is the one who is going to rule. So join me now in Luke chapter 16 and verse 16. Luke 16 and verse 16. And the word says, "The law and the prophets were until Yohanan. They were preached until then. Since that time, the kingdom of Yah is preached, and every man presseth into it." He says, Moses and Elijah, that which the prophets wrote then, that was preached up until John the Baptist. He was the last officiating legal priest, high priest. That's why he was able to baptize Yeshua. Why couldn't Annas do it? Or Caiaphas baptize him? Because they got their office mostly from Rome. Rome, as you know, was the power in leading at the time when Yeshua was there. He says the law and the prophets were preached up until John the Baptist, up until Yohanan. But now the kingdom. We must preach the kingdom. Yeshua did not come to establish a church. He did not come to establish a denomination. He came to establish a kingdom. So often when we hear people saying, "I belong to that church and I belong to that church and my church is such and such," the word says he has come to establish a kingdom. Come with me to the book of Hebrews, Ibrahim. And we will look at chapter 8 of Hebrews. Now, of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. Here is a conclusion. We have such a high priest, we have such a Cohen Agadal, who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty of the heavens. Remember, heavens is usually plural, because there are at least 3 heavens, but the earth is singular. A minister of the sanctuary of the true tabernacle. Where is the true tabernacle? In heaven. So when you hear people saying, "Our church, our tabernacle is the true," saying you have misunderstood chapter 8 of Hebrews. Which Yah pitched and not man. Who made it? Yah and not man. This is the pattern. Every church should look like this in practice. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is necessary that this man have something also to offer. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest. The writer of Hebrews says, while Yeshua was on earth, he was not a Kohen. He was not a priest. We know he was the appointed high priest, but we have no evidence where he acted in that capacity while he was on earth. He came as the lamb. Yohanan the Immerser said in 129, he says, "Behold, the Lamb of Yah cometh." So we know that he was the lamb, but he was not the priest. And we are told this is the true tabernacle where he ministers. And verse 10 says, "For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yah, I will put my laws," where? In their mind, "and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a Yah, and they shall be my people." So the same set of laws that were spoken in chapter 20 of Shemot, that's Exodus, to the people of Israel, it is the same set of laws that are given to the New Testament people. So when I hear people say that the fourth commandment was taken out of that, that's not Bible. If they speak not according to the word, according to Isaiah 8 and verse 20, it is because there is no truth in them. There's no light. There's a cloud of darkness over them. And so in chapter 12 now of Hebrews, we're told in verse 23, "To the general assembly and to the church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to Yah, the judge of all, and to the spirit of just men made perfect." So whatever assembly you belong to, you're part of a general one-body assembly that is connected to Yah. Don't promote your institution over that. Don't do so. And so the question comes back, who are these witnesses, the two witnesses? It almost seems obvious to some that the two witnesses are Elijah and Moses. But as we looked earlier in Mark chapter 9, it clearly says that they faded away because the laws and the prophets were preached up until John. And now Yeshua is letting you know that which they had written about me, I have now come to fulfill it, to live it, to reveal it to you. That's why I'm here. Come with me, therefore, to the book of Zechariah, Zechariah chapter 2. "Lift up mine eyes again and looked, and behold, a man with a measuring line in his hand. Then said I, Whither goest thou? And he said unto me, To measure Jerusalem, to see what is the breadth thereof, and what is the length thereof. And behold, the angel that talked with me went forth, and another angel went out to meet him, and said to him, Run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls, for the multitude of men and cattle therein. For I say it, Yah, will be unto her a wall of fire about, and will be the glory in the midst of her." Now, understand something here. This is a prophecy of the end time. We see Johanan is measuring the temple. We see this man here measuring Jerusalem. And whenever you see Yah measure something, he's letting you know, it's mine. It's mine. Leave out the outer court. That's given to the Gentiles. That's another issue. Because we have to define who the Gentiles are. Because they might not be who we think they are. Leave it out. Oh, come forth and flee from the land of the north, saith Yah, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of heaven, saith Yah. Deliver thyself, O Zion, and dwellest with you who dwell with the daughter of Zion. Come out of Babylon. Come out. I have dispersed you among the nation, and I am in the process of preparing Jerusalem for you to come in to be the incumbents. Come in. I've long since said that we are going through a second Exodus. And we've got to understand that. Otherwise, we miss what's going on in Gaza and elsewhere. You better come with me to Jeremiah chapter 16. And I want to read verse 14, reading on. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yah, that it shall no more be said, Yah liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt. But Yah liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands which he had driven them, and I will bring them again in their land that I gave unto their fathers. Did you get that? He says we're in a second Exodus, and the second Exodus, a spiritual Exodus, is going to be such that it will let the first Exodus look tame. But I don't think that people are getting this. And he said it's going to bring them to the land. So we cannot dismiss the idea that what is happening in Gaza and the rest of Israel is in preparation for the people who are going to be reigning with him in the kingdom. Because we know, according to chapter 21 of Revelation, that 15, that when John sees him after the millennium, there is no temple there. There is no temple. Now, the people who say that these two witnesses are going to be involved in the time that the Ezekiel temple is built, and you read through all those chapters from chapter 40 to chapter 48 in Ezekiel, you get the impression that a new temple is to be built. And many scholars and theologians believe that. But I think that has its challenge too, in the sense that we read in there that in that temple there would be the introduction or the reintroduction of the sacrificial system. And my question immediately would be, what then do we do with the work that Yeshua had so skillfully and with courage did for us? And in Hebrews 10, he said, the blood of bulls and goats could not cut it. He said, I have come to do your will. And so we cannot assume that that is the temple that John was measuring for. And yet the question as to who these witnesses are is still alive in our thoughts. So come with me to Zechariah chapter 4. Zechariah chapter 4. And the angel that talked with me came again and waked me as a man that is wakened out of his sleep, and said to me, what seest thou? And I said, I have looked, and behold, a candlestick, a menorah, of all gold with bowl upon the top of it, and his 7 lamps thereon, and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps which are unto the top thereof. Zechariah says, I see a menorah. Now, when we go back to Revelation chapter 11, and Johanan is told to measure the temple, we can see that the area of the temple that he is measuring is the Kodesh place, the holy place, the first apartment. Leave out where the sacrifice is made. And there's good reason for that. Because we have an ultimate sacrifice, Yeshua. You don't need to bring that kind of sacrifice anymore. You only need to bring yourself as a living sacrifice. You don't do that anymore. You don't kill bulls and goats and sheep anymore. You don't do that. Leave it out. Just measure the inside. And we know on the right, that's where the 12 loaves, the showbread, sits on the table of showbread. And on the south side, we have the menorah. And in between, we have the golden censer, where the prayer, just before that second veil, where the Ark of the Covenant is in the most holy place. That's where. He says, measure that, where the people are, where the priests are. Why? Because everyone is a priest. What do you mean? Well, if we go back to Shemot, Exodus chapter 19, the promise was, if you obey me, all of you will be a priest. But after the golden calf incident, it's clear that the people are not ready to be priests individually, so he gave them one priest from the line of Aaron. And he said, that was your schoolmaster. That schoolmaster would lead you until the time of the Messiah. And when he come at the time of refreshing, he will then bring you back to the original covenant, which is the Melchizedek covenant, not the Aaronic covenant. So we need to understand there are two things that is very important that people miss. There is the book of the covenant, which is the Ten Commandments, that was put inside of the chest. And there is a book of the law, which was put at the side. Let's read Deuteronomy, and we will take chapter 31 and verse 26. Take this book of the law, very specific, not the book of the covenant, the book of the law, and put it in the side of the ark, not the inside, but the side of the ark of the covenant of Yah your Elohim, that it may be there as a witness against you. The book of Deuteronomy is a witness against you. And I wonder whether the book of Deuteronomy would have been written in the way that it has had there not been a golden calf incident. Because the intent of Yah here was that everyone, by way of obedience to him, which the children of Israel did say, we will do everything that Yah said, they would be priests. So when we are given the Melchizedek order of things, that's the original covenant that was given to Abraham, everyone is a priest. Everyone is a priest. And so we need to understand that situation. So Yeshua, we know, is the high priest, and he's serving, as we read in the book of Hebrews, in the temple, in the tabernacle. So when he leaves the tabernacle, when he takes off his Cohen garment, his priestly garment, and leaves the tabernacle, there will be no high priest in the temple. And this is why we need to understand Revelation chapter 22 and verse 11. I often call this the Kodak moment. When he comes out, there is no one else to receive your prayer. No one making intercession for you. No work of advocacy being done for you, because the judgment is complete and the docket are listed with the names of the people, those who are saved and those who are not saved. Revelation chapter 22 verse 11, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he that is filthy, let him be filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, and he that is Kodash, who is holy, let him be holy still. So once he comes out, whatever mode you're caught in, a snap moment, Polaroid moment, that's how you will spend your eternity. That's how you will spend your eternity. Come back, let's go back to Zekaryah 4. And these, verse 3, chapter 4, and 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bow, and the other upon the left side thereof. So I answered and spake to the angel that talked with me, saying, what are these, my master? Then the angel that talked with me answered and said unto me, knowest thou not what these be? You don't know what these are? And I said, no, my master. Then he answered and spake unto me, saying, this is the word of Yah unto Zerubbabel, saying, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith Yahvah'S. Did you get that? Who are these? And the word said, they are the word of Yah. The word of Yah. Yeshua himself said, study the scriptures, because these are they that testify of me. So as the scroll unfolds, the story about the two witnesses, the word of Yah, they are the people, they are the beings that testify of Yeshua. And they are the true witnesses, the word. And they have been testifying down the ages. They have. And it's an idiom way back in Israel that the law and the prophets stand for two witnesses, the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Torah and the Brit Hadashah. Not a living Moses and a living Elijah. And the world has rejected and continues to reject Yah and to reject his word. And the word says they will kill them in the street, even as during the period in France, the so-called enlightened period, when the Bible was burned in the street. Solomon said, what's new? Ecclesiastes 1:9. Nothing new under the sun. It will happen again. They will reject, and the people will rejoice. But he says, they will come alive. How will they come alive? Because the word of Yah is what? Self-executing. It's his breath that breathes. We are told in Timothy, are we not, that the word is Yah breathe. So they will come alive again unto the people. And they will become afraid. You can't kill the word. Because the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And they were amazed when after 3 days the word got up. And they told the people, we will give you money for you to say that they stole the butter. But the word became flesh and dwelt and appeared before his disciple. John says, in the beginning was the word. And the word became flesh. And the word came unto his own, and his own received him not. And the word is testifying about Yeshua, the living word. You didn't hear me. I said the written word testifies of the living word. The Torah and the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. These are the two witnesses. True witnesses. They don't tell lies. Everything they say is true. But teachers would have you believe that Elijah and Moses would be exhumed. No, not so at all. Zekaryah was told, this is the word of Yah. The word. Let's read it again. Verse 11. Then answered and said unto him, what are these 2 olive trees upon the right side of the menorah, and upon the left side thereof? And I answered again and said unto him, what be these 2 olive branches which through the 2 golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? And he answered me and said, knowest thou not that these be? And I said, no, my master. Then said he, these are the 2 anointed ones that stand by Yahweh of the whole earth. They're the anointed one, the word. Who is the anointed one? Yeshua. The written word testifies of the living word. And so, in our study this morning, we ought to remind ourselves of Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6. Behold, I will send you Elijah, the prophet before coming of the great and dreadful day. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. So this prophecy was fulfilled in John the Baptist. And it's going to happen a second time. So the preacher should be preaching even as John the Immerser or Johanan the Immerser preached. Repent, we should be telling the people. And so as I started out this morning, and I talked about the current administration and what I consider to be a sign, a prophetic sign, with a president by the name of Trump, alluding to trumpet, the last trump, the last trumpet. Shaul in 1 Corinthians chapter 14 talked about a trumpet. If the trump shall sound, and you don't understand the sound. I know the context here, he was talking about tongues, speaking in tongues. But he says, if a trumpet sounds and you don't understand the sounding, if you cannot interpret the sound of the trumpet, how will you know why it's blown? Because in Israel, there was a time when you blow a trumpet for the people to congregate. There was a time when you blow the trumpet and it's for war. So the sound that we're hearing through the voice of the administration, what does it mean to the people prophetically? In the context of tariffs and what is coming. And so as I hear the waves of sound, the rhetoric that is coming from politics and economics, they serve mostly to describe the cyclical fluctuation of morals in a country and even in the world. In a capitalist society, it's all about money. And it doesn't matter who is in office, the dollar is always in power. We've got to understand that. And so the media has noised this message abroad, and the people bought into the idea. So the new era that was promised in 24 would be characterized by periods of expansion and wealth. But as people are now finding out, these are hypothesized hyperboles. That's what they are. Driven by conjectures. Because I read, come with me to Jeremiah, while they are offering a better deal and a better way, a time of prosperity. Listen to Jeremiah chapter 30, verses 6 to 8. As you know, and see whether a man does travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hand on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. But he shall be saved out of it, for it shall come to pass in that day, saith Yahweh of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him. The countries and the leaders of the world are promising prosperity. Jeremiah says, no, a time of trouble. And so come with me to the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 9, as we bring this to its closure. And we're going to read verse 24. It says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. That's Daniel's people. That's Israel. And I'm not talking about geographical Israel or political Israel. I'm talking about the Israel of Yah, Galatians 6:16, the people who accept Yeshua and are part of that Abrahamic covenant. That's the people I'm talking about. And so there's going to be a time for them to bring themselves together and understand everything. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem, you understand why it was being measured now. the Messiah and the Prince shall be 7 weeks. And 62 weeks the street shall be built again, and the wall in troublous time. And we're talking post-exilic group here with Zerubbabel and Nehemiah and Ezra, and we know they built the temple, and we also know that the Messiah was cut off in the middle of the week. Now, let me say something on that, because there are two dates being put forward by scholars. Some say the date was started in 457 BC, and some say it is 444, 445 BC during the time of Nehemiah. And the reason some argue that way is that in Nehemiah time, the temple was built, but the city was not built. And you remember Nehemiah went to the king and asked for permission to go and build the city walls and build a city. So if you take that, that is going to be 444, 445. But if you say that this was prophesied in the original sign or the original decree in 457 BC, then that would be what Daniel spoke about in chapter 8 and verse 14. When then shall the temple be cleansed? What temple? The heavenly temple. Because Yeshua is in heaven. He's not on earth. And there's no temple on the earth. So come on. Let's be logical. Truth must be logical when we look at it. And so we're talking about the 490 years. And so the Messiah was cut off in the middle of the week. Now, a lot of people say, and some denominations say, he was cut off in the middle of the prophetic week. That's not what the Bible is talking about. He was cut off in the middle of the week on Wednesday. That's when he was crucified. He was crucified on Wednesday. And therefore, if he was cut off at week 483, there is 1 week left. 1 week is 7 days. 483 and 7, that's 490. That's what Daniel here is talking about in chapter 9. And he says, during that time, someone's going to make a covenant with them, and he's going to break it. And some teach that this covenant here is with Yeshua. But Yeshua doesn't break his covenant. It's we who usually break covenants. And so, come with me to Thessalonian. 2 Thessalonians, that is, chapter 2, because the word wants you to know, as Paul endeavors for you to know, that at that time, when apostasy is rife in the church, as it is now, let's read it. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Master Yeshua HaMashiach, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not shaken in mind or be troubled, neither by the Spirit, nor by the word, nor by letter as from us, as that day of Yeshua is at hand. Let no man deceive you. No man, your pastor, your elder, your deacon, no man, no politician, no judge. Let no man deceive you by any means, and don't deceive yourself either. By any means, except there be a falling away. There's going to be apostasy in the church first. Notice that, and we see that now. The churches are, many of them are apostatizing. We see it. So the prophecy is here fulfilling. And then the man of sin, the son of perdition, who opposed and exalted himself above all that is called Yah, and his worship, so that he let's read it again. He who opposeth and exalted himself above all that is called Yah, or that is worship, so that he, as Yah, sitteth in the temple of Yah, showing himself that he is Yah. So there is going to be one who comes and sit in the temple of Yah. Now, most people think this is a literal temple, the temple that is spoken of in Ezekiel chapter 40, as I spoke earlier. But what if it's talking about you, the temple? And so the ideas and the philosophies and the thoughts of this evil person, you have imbibed them and take them. Then that is the man of sin in your temple. and you would need cleansing. May we understand, therefore, that the witnesses that we talked about this morning and we discussed, the two witnesses are the word of Yah, the written word who testifies of the living word. And so the word became flesh, dwell among us. And even now, we have not grasped him. We have not understood him. May Yah give us understanding because we pray and we do so in his love and by his grace, in his name. Hallelujah.